Today what we're going to do is we're going back to section 8.5, and we've already done day one. And in day one, if you remember, we talked the difference between a linear function and an exponential function. We wrote rules for the different types of exponential functions. We graphed different types of exponential functions on the graph, and then we compared them. Today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at real world problems. So we're looking at standard 8C, solving real life exponential equations. Now, in exponential growth, it can happen, remember, with rabbits, or it can happen with bacteria, or it can happen with money. And today we're going to look a little bit at investing money and how to invest money. The equation that they give you is y equals a parentheses 1 plus r over n parentheses nt. A is the initial amount. What that essentially is how much you deposit into your bank account. The growth rate that we're going to use is a percentage. And if you remember back a couple of years ago, we talked about if I have, 3%, we can also write that as 0.03. And so we move that decimal place 2 places to the left when we go from a percentage to a decimal. The growth factor is just 1 plus r, which is the growth rate. T is the time period, so number of years. And n is times per year. Now this is where it can get a little complicated. If they talk about monthly, you're going to put in 12. When they talk about daily, you're going to put in 365 because there's 365 days in a year. If they talk about semi-annually, they're talking about 2, meaning it's going to happen twice per year. And if they talk about quarterly, think quarters, there's 4 quarters in a dollar. And if they talk about yearly, you're going to put in a 1 because it happens 1 time per year. Right? So you need to remember that when you're doing these problems. Most students, if they have difficulty in these areas. So let's take a look at our word problem. First of all, you can put $250 in a savings account, right, that earns 4% annual interest compound yearly. You do not make any deposits or withdrawals. They're asking you how much will your investment be worth in 10 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that equation that we had on the last page. So y equals a parentheses 1 plus r over n and to the nt. So we're going to look at that equation and we're going to plug in what we know. First of all, let's take a look at how much we're going to deposit. Right? It says that you put $250 in your savings account. So that is going to be your A. Parentheses 1 plus. Now my rate, remember that's my percentage. I look at my problem and it's 4%. And remember, I need to turn that into a decimal. So I'm going to say 0.04, right? And then they say that we're going to compound it yearly. And if you look at that list from the last page, remember we looked at it, was monthly was 12, daily 365, semi-annually 2, quarterly a 4, yearly is a 1. So we are going to put a 1 underneath that. And then again, the n, we're going to repeat 1, and it's going to be times t. T is the number of years. If you can look in the word problem, you'll notice it's 10 years. Right? So we've got the setup of our problem. Now what we need to do is we need to fine tune this a little bit. We're going to go y equals 250 parentheses. Okay, if I take 0.04 and I divide that by 1, that's not going to do anything to my word problem. That's not going to do anything at all. So essentially, I'm going to leave it as 0.04. So this becomes 1.04 parentheses. And 1 times 10 is just 10. Now what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in your calculator. You're going to make sure that you use your calculator because remember, you cannot use your iPad on a test. What I tend to do is I work with my parentheses first. So I'm going to put 1.04 in my calculator. And then remember, I'm going to use my exponent key. And there's different types of exponent keys. Sometimes you get a caret. Sometimes it's, y to the x. Some calculators are x to the y, right? You want to make sure that you pick the right one that works with your calculator. Mine is the caret key. So I'm going to use the caret key to the 10th. And I'm going to push equals. And then I'm going to put times 250 equals. And so y gives me, I have $370.06. And then I'm going to leave that. So at the end of 10 years, right, I have $370.06. So you're going to make sure that you round it to the nearest penny, right? All right, so you'll notice that this problem was pretty easy because it was compounded yearly. That's easy. When we get to other types of compounded, that's where students tend to have difficulty. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our equation again. Y equals A parentheses 1 plus R over N parentheses to the NT power, right? So we're going to start there again. We're going to go y equals, and my A, again, that's what I deposit. So what did I deposit? Well, I deposited $1,000. Parentheses 1 plus. All right, now I got to take a look at the interest rate. So I'm going to take a look at 3%. Right here, 3%. So I'm going to put that as a decimal, 0.03 over, right? Now notice that it's compounded not yearly, but monthly. And remember, when we see monthly, how many months are there in a year? There are 12. So I'm going to put 12 parentheses. My n then in my exponent is 12 times, right? And it says for 8 years. So I'm going to put in 8. All right, y equals 1,000 then. I get 1. And I have to do a little bit of math. I'm going to do 0.03 divided by 12. I get 0.0025. And then I have to take 12 times 8. And I get 96. So now what we do is we go y equals, and we put this all in your calculator. Remember, I start with my parentheses first. Think of order of operations. 1.0025, caret key, 96, equals, then multiply that by 1,000. And I end up with $1,270.87. And you want to make sure that you got your label and you round to the nearest decimal, right? So that is essentially exponential growth using money compounded different ways. Now, if you have any questions, make sure that you either ask me during work time or email me. I'll try to answer them as best I can. Also, remember that you need to check your answers in my book before you go ahead and hand that assignment in.